Hello, welcome back to Marathon Man, where I'm going through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me at the debut story of the Ice Warriors. It's called The Ice Warriors. Ice in the Cybermen tombs, snow in Tibet, and now the Ice Warriors. A lot like Brosnan's Bond films, it's possible to get snow fatigue with the beginning of season 5 of Doctor Who. Seriously, in each one of Brosnan's Bond films, there's snow at some point. And it's noticeable for a film series with a couple of years between each film. So for Doctor Who to bung snow at us on such a regular basis at the moment, yeah, it definitely sticks out. What also stick out are the titles. This story opens dramatically with massive titles followed by lots of shouting. And it could be too much if the performances weren't as well done as they are. It's definitely an interesting way to start a story with something of a jolt rather than a tease. And the score helps add to this as well. And the bass is a nice mix of future and past, and I appreciate that. It's like the staff have considered that this will also be their home as well as their workplace. It's an added little bit of garnish which helps ground everything when their outfits threaten to go a bit too 1960s sci-fi. Interestingly, we don't open with our TARDIS crew, and it seems to take a little bit of a while before they even show up. So beginning with and spending so much time with the guest characters actually turns out to be quite a wise move when it comes to this story. We get to meet them for ourselves prior to the Doctor, Jamie and Victoria. Meeting them on our terms rather than through the regulars' eyes actually makes spending 6 episodes with them that little bit more bearable than it might have been if we'd have seen, say, for example, Clent. If the first we'd seen of Clent was when the Doctor shows up. I actually think Clent is quite interesting, and I think I'm inclined to give him a little bit more slack than some fans. Season 5 might have a lot of archetypes, and they might have a lot of base commanders, and then I don't think Clent is high in the list of fans' favourite base commanders. But I happen to think Clent is really interesting because he's so very much a prat. And Peter Barkworth plays him excellently. He really embraces the character and makes him, I feel, slightly different from the base commanders that are to come. His reliance on the computer and on technology to sort his problems really goes some way to explaining his rise to command. Had he had only himself, his wits and his instincts to rely on, then he'd never have got where he has, as brilliantly pointed out as the story goes on. The character is frustrating, he's unlikable, and he can't see what's in front of him on account of having technology to do everything for him. And therefore, I think the character is a success. He's meant to be all of these things, and the fact that he is so much all of these things makes his reconciliation with Penley at the end of the story actually mean something. It's wonderful, that moment, and a really nice way to close the whole thing out. Penley is another one who I'm happy to spend time with, and having set up Clent and the base, we can instantly relate to Penley's abandonment of it, and we kind of side with him in his desire to think for himself. And it isn't just his distrust of having to rely so heavily on machines in the way that everybody at the base does. It's also his dismissal and his dislike of it, which I think really helps chisel him into a real character. That he is so opposite to Clent and so well played by Peter Sallis. That reconciliation at the end actually means something. And for a sort of like bog standard trout and monster runaround, I really appreciate the effort that's gone into crafting like well-rounded characters. Every character in this story, I think, feels like a real person, with the exception of the Ice Warriors and the bear. The Ice Warriors aren't really meant to be characters, though, are they? We're firmly in monster season now, where the monsters are monsters and any grey area is purely down to the fact that we're watching in black and white. They're the baddies, act accordingly, and only really need to hiss and scheme and kill and be given names like Varga, Zondel and Toolrock. That's enough as far as the production team are concerned. So, as characters, the Ice Warriors fail. As monsters, though, which is what all of the energy that's put into making them is channeled into, they definitely hit the mark. First glimpsing Varga in the ice, he looks magnificent, and the mystery surrounding him is intriguing and a really good hook. He is far too ancient to be kitted out in all of this tech, whatever it is. So, what the hell is he? What's clever is that for as long as he's in the ice, we still don't know. And what's also clever is that the title of the story doesn't give anything away either. It's not called The Martians, as it so easily could have been. It's called The Ice Warriors. And we know that the Ice Warriors come from Mars now, but at this point, the show hadn't divulged that. So Varga could easily be from a lost human civilization at this point with weirdly advanced technology. So when it's revealed that they are from Mars, that does work as a satisfying explanation, even if, once they are out of the ice, the warriors become less interesting. Now, don't get me wrong, their design is still top-notch. The look, the voice, it all works as a successful Doctor Who menace, and it's easily the best design we've had since we first met the Cybermen, so their recurring status isn't really that hard to get your head around. Although when Varga wakes up at the end of episode 1, I am reminded of my nan with her teeth out. Yet, while they give their name to their title, this story is about much more than the warriors themselves. I came away from this story feeling like they were incidental. What I took from this was a story about man's reliance on technology and being forced to work together as friends and as people, as humans are so brilliantly capable of doing once we stop being so brilliant at disagreeing with and fighting each other. That the story ends with Clenton Penley making up rather than just ending with vanquishing the Ice Warriors is proof of that, I think. This is a story that I feel is about us as much, if not more, than big green baddies from Mars. However, there's a but. Due to this, I feel like it has quite a lot to recommend about it, even if it might have been better served and better handled in another era of the show. At this point, we are firmly in the Troughton Years base versus monster stage. So that plot strand, while it is more prominent than I would have thought, doesn't have as much deference paid to it as it might have done in another era, which I think would have made this story a lot better, because to some degree the balance between that plot strand, which I find incredibly interesting, and the Ice Warriors, which I find good monsters, they don't sit as well in harmony. I think the Ice Warriors are really great Doctor Who monsters, and I think the plot strand of humanity's reliance on technology, the rift it causes between the humans, and then having to bandy together and rely on each other rather than the machines to vanquish the foes, I think that's incredibly interesting. But I don't think they exist in tandem quite as harmoniously as they could. So you see, when I see a story that I would rather be more dominant, creeping through a less satisfying one, I sort of end up finding it a sort of frustrating watch. So I find myself entertained by the Ice Warriors, but still seeing it as a little bit of an own goal. Well, not exactly pacey, it certainly goes about using its 6 episodes better than The Abominable Snowmen did. And what we have here, compared with that previous story, is what feels like a more experienced runner. The Abominable Snowmen began quite strongly, then ran out of energy quite quickly. The Ice Warriors keeps slightly more sustained pace throughout, which results in all of the episodes being stronger than a lot of the Abominable Snowmen's. And therefore, for me, that makes it a more rewarding story. So, what of the usual suspects? Well, Jamie gets paralysed, and so therefore doesn't have as much to do as normal. But he does get one sublime moment earlier on when he sort of like casually mentions to Victoria what all of the women are wearing and cheekily teases her about maybe wearing the same. We now have companions who are real people again, and it's refreshing after such a swing the other way relatively recently. Victoria may not go up further in my estimations in the confines of these 6 episodes, but she certainly remains as high as she reached last time, and she's quite whiny when kidnapped by the Ice Warrior, but she would be. Fear itself doesn't necessarily make a character awful, it's just that I was mistaken in my belief that that was all that defined her. And she even uses that image once again as subterfuge, although maybe not as convincingly this time. And there's no denying that she fits right in with her crew, building up a really nice rapport with the Doctor. Certainly more so than Ben and Polly did with either of their Doctors. Although, you know, I am willing to concede that they might be victims of the handover. But they're also victims of other things as well, which is less care paid to them than I think Victoria is getting. So she may not be as well served in this story as she was in the last two, but she's still loads better than my brain had tricked me into believing. And it's worth pointing out that it's Victoria who takes down the Ice Warrior at the beginning of episode 6. Need I mention how good Troughton is? Like Hartnell before him, we're at the point where we can take it as read, I think. When he shows up and instantly averts an explosion by eccentrically and erratically running around, when he insists on going in somewhere just out of curiosity, and when he beats the computer, this is most recognisably the show we still watch today. Even though I do think we can take it as read that Troughton brings the goods to even the most lifeless of stories, there's something I notice he excels at in each successive one, and that is how good he is at playing a hero who himself is pretending not to be. It's a remarkably layered performance, and he makes it look so easy. Saving the base, the world, the human race, whatever it is that week is just par for the course for him, and then he's off as soon as he can be without even saying goodbye, as keen as I am to get to the next story. After 185 episodes, I continue to marvel at how fresh a show which I have seen many times before and which at this point in its life is 60 years old can still feel. Penley and Clent's begrudging, touching and very real reconciliation, the culmination of what I think is actually the A-plot of this serial. The cliffhanger to episode 4 should be edge of the seat brilliance, but it just falls flat. Now, maybe you were watching this video and from what I was saying, you thought it was going to be higher than that. But like I tried and maybe failed to articulate, I think that there's a better story hiding in there. So my enthusiasm for the Ice Warriors comes from that story that I detect underneath, rather than the story itself is. But because it's the story itself that I'm appraising, and I wish it were to some level something else, I don't think I can award it much higher. So because of the sort of like dichotomy. Is it the dichotomy? Discrepancy. The discrepancy between the story I think it could be and the story that it is, the balance sort of comes out at the bang in the middle, basically. As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this snow day, then you know how YouTube works. Please do give it a like and give it a share. It really does help. And what do you think of this story? Do the Ice Warriors go on to have stronger appearances elsewhere, or were they never better than in their debut here? Is this a highlight of the Base Under Siege monster season, or is it one of its missteps? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here soon for what is probably this season's outlier. So if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and I'll meet you on the beach for a paddle.